And it's the year 2019, and we're back with another year of the Rational Standard podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Babaya. And today we have 4 people here to contribute to the events of 2019 in a special episode. Let's just go around. Of course, you all know me from the previous year. Christiaan?
Yeah, my name is Christiaan van Huyssteen. I'm also one of the founders of Rational Standard, and I like talking about these kind of things we're going to talk about.
I am Christiaan Hugo, and I refused to join the Rational Standard when it started, but have taken an interest in it very recently.
I'm Nicholas Woode-Smith. You should know me. I'm the managing editor of the Rational Standard and also currently known as the Hat Guy on Twitter.
Ah, yes. Oh, that's because of your profile picture, isn't it?
Yeah, the irony is that I seldom ever wear that hat.
Well, I think that's a poor life choice.
Yeah, I think so.
Regardless.
Never mind, let's
Okay, regardless. The year 2019 has a lot to hold for South Africa. I think we can all agree with that. There's a lot of stuff going on in our politics right now. And I think it was all sort of going as things normally were right up until the point that Jacob Zuma left office, and then we had Cyril Ramaphosa, and all of a sudden land reform becomes an issue on the table. And now there's a lot at stake. So I think the biggest immediate event that we have in our political scene are the 2019 elections. So let's go around the circle. I'll say what I think is going to happen first in the 2019 elections, and you all can tell me whether you think I'm right or wrong. So I think the best way to look at it is look at the individual parties. Okay, ANC. ANC has been declining steadily over the last couple of elections as more support gets drawn to other parties. Unfortunately, the Zuma years have really tarnished their brand. So it was a very tactical move by the ANC executive powers to remove Zuma and take in a nice, shiny new replacement, Cyril Ramaphosa, who at least looks very good from the outside. He's like a very good PR move for the ANC. I think that, combined with the fact that they have this new populist thing, this land reform issue, which we always kind of spoke about in South Africa, but now it's becoming a main issue, could give them the first time that they improve their voter share, I think, since any election. I think since 1994 this would be the first time. I don't recall if the election following 94 they improved or not. So I think the ANC is going to go up. I initially thought the EFF would go down because the whole reason for the EFF's existence were they were sort of the radical lefties in South African political spectrum, but now the ANC is taking up the same issues which the EFF has been campaigning on. So I thought EFF supporters might return home to the ANC. And the problem is with the EFF has right now is the VBS scandal is really going to tarnish their image a lot. Although I scarcely think perhaps their supporters don't really care about that. So the EFF's a tricky one. I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen there, but if I had to put money, I'd say they'd go down slightly, with supporters really voting for them going back to the ANC. But if not, I think they also have a pretty good chance of going up. The DA, now obviously not all the parties can go up or go down. There has to be some sort of equilibrium. With regards to the DA, I think it's going to come down to what sort of campaign. I've seen a few campaign posters of theirs. It looks like it could be a pretty good unifying campaign at a time when the president is talking about lackadaisical whites and things like this. So if they can get a really good campaign and a lot of momentum going to the election, I think they can improve. But failing that, I think the DA just hasn't been strong enough on what is a very, very critical issue in this country. And I think they have the potential to lose voter support to other even smaller political parties in South Africa. So from that, over to you, gentlemen. What do you think?
Well, what kind of pisses me off about this whole thing is that for the past 3 or 4 years, we were told that December 2017, we had lots of uncertainty. We were told it's December 2017, we're going to get some sort of indication of the direction the country's going in. We're going to get some sort of certainty. We've had the whole 2018. We've had Cyril. We've had the Cyril mania, and then we've had the Cyril recession, the Rama session, and I don't think we got any certainty. I mean, all the kind of smart business people said no. Cyril knows what he's doing. Trust him. The Alec Hoggs of the world who live in the UK keep on. I mean, I get his daily email and he tells me Cyril is great. Let's just trust him, which I find hard to trust. And now 2019, the election is coming up, and we are being told that we must believe that 2019, this election, now we're going to get certainty and clarity on the future. I think the Institute of Race Relations, I think their polling is quite accurate, or at least it made sense to me. If I remember correctly, they kind of said that the ANC will get around 60, maybe just less than 60%. Well, I see the latest thing I see is actually 56% in front of me. Anyway, let's say give or take 60%. The EFF might get 10 or 11%, and the DA should get between 18 and 22%. That seems realistic to me, and sitting here now thinking about it, I don't see how those results would give us a lot more certainty about the future. You know, will Cyril then magically get the mandate, supposedly, that everyone's talking about to clear out the corrupt elements in the ANC? I don't think so. I think if he wanted to do something seriously about it, he could do it now. He's very popular. You know, it would kind of be hard for on any populist level to go against that within the ANC or without. Maybe there's complexities I don't understand. I don't think so. So I don't think we're going to get any more clarity. If anything, we're going to maybe just get more uncertainty. We're going to go further and further down the line. I think the EFF remains popular because the economy is not growing. People are getting poorer. It's just populism, and a very, very bad kind of populism, I think. And then, of course, you get the DA. DA would traditionally be the classical liberal party of South Africa, the kind of party people like us would traditionally vote for, if I can say that. I think the problem with the DA is their leadership has not been very clear. They've been, on very issues, they've kind of tried to be populist, and then on other issues, they've been kind of solid. The biggest thing, I think, though, is you get the ANC. I mean, they tell you, Cyril's here, he's going to fix everything. You get the EFF. The EFF offers a vision of the future. I've come to think that that's very important. The DA offers no alternative vision of the future. I mean, the DA voter, they don't tell you what South Africa is going to be like if they come to power, if you vote for them, if you give them more authority in Parliament. You know, they just criticize the ANC and they bitch and moan about corruption. And we see their members of Parliament. I mean, everybody raves when they go in Parliament and they make a bit of a hoo-ha about how bad corruption is. I know 60 million other South Africans who would also love to go in Parliament, and they'll give you just as much of a show about how much they hate corruption. There's nothing intrinsically special about that. I think we'll see what happens in this election. I think the DA will not get they won't see a growth in their support. I think that will have to be put on the shoulders of their leadership, and I think there would have to be serious radical change in that party. It's a pity because that leaves us another 3 or 5 years out before they get another shot. So from that point of view, without getting too elaborate about it, I do not see in the foreseeable future where positive change in South Africa is going to come from. If it does come, it's not going to come from a traditional political party, I believe.
My view is that the real thing that people should be focusing on in the future are the legal ramifications of EWC. I truly do believe that the concept of South Africa as a country that is a signatory to anti-EWC laws internationally will affect not only South Africa's standing in the world, but it will have massive economic ramifications, not only in terms of another possible downgrade, which would mean if Moody's were to downgrade us, I believe that there truly is no hope for South Africa to turn around anytime soon. I believe that we'll probably be in a downward spiral for at least 2 years. And I also believe that there is no alternative to the ANC, which would mean that there would be no option to get away from EWC, as currently they are standing by the concept, even though in the past they have been vehemently against it.
Well, not vehemently.
They have been.
Have they?
Yes. In the 90s they were against it. That's
well,
why
the ANC of post 94 was quite different. You know, they actually, if you go look post 94, the economy actually grew. Although I think a large part of that can be due to vast majority of this country's population having rights for the first time.
It was also
Yes.
international globalization. Everyone was doing well
Yeah.
after that time.
They were certainly different, though. I mean, Leon Lowe has even described the Mandela/Mbeki years as being like fiscally conservative.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't
No,
know.
they
Maybe
were.
that's a bit of an
They had,
exaggeration.
their policies weren't perfect, but they were actually reasonably good. Better than the
Well,
apartheid policies.
tax rates weren't very high and they were running a surplus. That's
Yeah,
fiscally conservative.
exactly.
What was the top marginal tax rate in the early
It was a lot
2000s?
easier.
It couldn't have been higher.
But at the end of the day, the ANC decided that they would add the Article 25 into the Constitution. It was nobody else that decided that that should happen. I mean,
Well, there's an interesting story about you're talking about the property rights clause.
the
right?
property rights clause.
Yeah.
From the Free Market Foundation.
The Free Market Foundation were the ones who were kind of responsible for bringing that up.
Yeah,
And
good.
the story was quite interesting. I heard it in a talk from Leon Lowe. He said they were having this meeting at Arniston, I think. I hope if I stand to be corrected here. And they were about to finish up, and there was no property rights clause because people thought that this was like entrenching and supporting white privilege or something like that. And they came into this meeting and they said, would it not be tragic if for decades your people the native people of this country have been denied the ability to own property, and you're going to continue to deny them that post-apartheid? Think about how bizarre that is. And I think on that basis then
They're still doing that.
they
though.
became convinced. I apologize, we've interrupted you now.
Oh.
Nick, are you on Fisher?
The whole thing is that the South African government, and that's the only thing that truly matters, whether it's the ANC government, whether it's some other government, the South African government has promised the world and the world's investors that they will not expropriate land without compensation. And we have seen it in Zimbabwe. We saw in 2011 that Swiss farmers were given $200 million from the Zimbabwean government for expropriation from land, which they were able to execute through the legal sale of property in the United States. And I believe that the very same thing will happen to South Africa if this passes and if it's executed upon. There's no reason to expect it. There is a very large population of expat owners of South African farms, and they will go back to law. They will sue them. There's no, I mean, why would you walk away from your land if you have a right to it on an international basis? It doesn't, you don't have to go to South African court in order to settle this. It's silly.
Nick Woode-Smith.
So I think that a little bit of an echo chamber here against EWC. If there's anyone at this table who's kind of pro it, I'd be very surprised.
I apologize if anybody listening to this is surprised by now.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. I'm sorry for the shock. I'll make it up for you. Just send me your email and I'll send you a free copy of my book. To actually return to election predictions. Now, it's very hard to make predictions, and I think to paraphrase an idea from Franz Cunier's books, if anyone claims they're making predictions, they're probably lying. But we can try to make a sort of prediction based on our gut. My gut feeling is that the overwhelming winner of the 2019 elections is going to be the did not vote, stayed home and bride or slept in party. It's a long abbreviation. If someone can figure it out for me, I'd be appreciated. I can see you doing that right now, Babaya.
I'm thinking about the acronym, but I can't get it.
It's too long. It's not. We need to change it to marketers. I think we should register that. But if we're going to talk about the established parties, I think the DA is definitely going to suffer. Either they're not going to receive any sort of growth, or they're going to lose voters, purely because they have alienated their prime voter base in an effort to try to steal voters who don't vote for the ANC because they like the ANC's policies, but because it's the ANC. That's the big problem in South Africa, is that a lot of people try to treat the South African politics like a European or American political system, when we are, for all intents and purposes, a new democracy. And no new democracy can work like a democracy with hundreds of years of mileage.
Can I ask why not? Sorry.
Why not? It's just institutional development, education, and I don't mean education as in the traditional sense of, paying. What did we establish was the budget of South Africa's education ministry?
Combined with post-secondary, it's about 345 billion.
Yeah. So we can see how much that money has helped educate our population. But when I mean education, I actually mean a sort of a culture surrounding democracy. America, for all its problems, and there's many problems, kind of understand democracy to a degree. They understand that you can change things, that you should vote for people for what they plan to do rather than who they are. Of course, this kind of changes. This is not perfect, and a lot of people might disagree with me based on the most recent election. But in South Africa, it's even worse. And we come from out of apartheid, where most of the population was not allowed to vote, where they were still relegated along tribal lines and traditional authorities. And to a large degree, that's how many South Africans treat the democratic government. They vote as a matter of you have to do it, not as a matter of this is how I should change the country. So that means we get people voting for presidents as if they're basically electing the chief who's already chief just for the sake of saying that they like the chief. And the problem with this is that the DA has been treating the South African population like a sophisticated voter base, meaning that they think they can appeal to their better nature or their love for meritocracy or their love for certain types of ideology. And the problem is, as a result of that, they have sacrificed their core values in effort to try to appeal to people who are either going to vote for the ANC or not vote for anyone at all. And back to an earlier point, I think the ANC will actually regain their losses after the Zuma era. And we can see this in the mandates of most of the parties. The EFF and the DA's main mandate for an extremely long time was basically just anti-Zuma. They didn't have any sort of actual core values or core mandates. The DA's core mandate during Mbeki was basically, look at us, we can do service delivery slightly better. But I think especially our colleague in Johannesburg, Martin van Staden, can attest to, service delivery from the DA in Joburg hasn't been that great. Maybe there's just a fundamental difference between Cape Town and Johannesburg that makes it Johannesburg can never be great, or maybe the DA just isn't that good at their job. So it means they can no longer keep appealing to the service delivery promises, and they need to actually decide that they need to become different again, and rather say, because they can no longer say we're bad at service delivery, and they can no longer say we don't have Zuma.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the tribal sort of nature of South African politics in terms of how we vote. I'd like to point something out, that this is not just an ANC thing, this is a DA thing as well. I know people who vote for DA blindly. I think the thing which makes me most depressed about the DA is that they sort of try to show themselves off as this liberal party, and of course it is a big church party. They love to advertise themselves like that. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong per se, but I see them bending over backwards to sort of justify certain things, and there are certain MPs on Twitter who I see taking bizarre positions.
You can say her name.
Social. Boomzila Van Dam. But look, she's not the only one. I don't want to single her out. That's why I'm saying.
You're not special, sorry.
But she's chalk and cheese compared to others. Michael Cardo, I think he's great in a lot of positions. But I will never forget interviewing him on this Rational Standard podcast following Ernst Rutz's testimony to Parliament and the whole controversy that sort of blew up after that. Obviously, Mpiaka wrote a great article on Rational Standard sort of defending him, and there was a lot of back and forth. And I asked Michael Cardo, what did you think? Because a DA MP said, I believe it was, we cannot stand with you on anything that you've just said, or something like that. Basically distancing herself entirely, and said DA MP on Twitter backed her fully, and I don't know if Musi said anything about it, but basically the general idea was the party was like, no, we can't deal with these guys. And Michael Cardo on the episode, he said to me, and the exact quote will obviously be up there on the episode, he said, I don't really agree with the sort of massive condemnation against Ernst Rutz, which is nice to hear after the fact, but it would have been better during the fact, and it would have been better from people higher up in the party, that you really have to stand on principle, and you can't just throw people under the bus when they're associated with AfriForum.
Yeah, I think the big problem with identifying the DA is something they've admitted themselves, which is that Musi desperately wants people to view him as an Obama-like figure. But the problem is with anyone who's actually analysed the US Democratic Party a lot is that they're a mass party by definition. They don't have any actual core values. They don't have any core policies. They basically go for whatever they think will get them votes. And they'll call themselves utilitarian, but the problem with that, which is a big can of worms, is how do you judge what is the most efficient policy? You still need ideology for that. But the problem with the DA is that it's absorbed so many people who have only been educated by American politics. So they join thinking that they're joining an American Liberal Party or an American Democratic Party rather than a South African one that believes in core values of freedom and reason and actual democracy rather than what just sounds good and gets the most votes. And this is the problem with this, an identity crisis where Musi desperately wants to be Obama but doesn't really understand what made Obama appealing and also doesn't understand what made Obama a really bad president.
Well, I think, to actually catch on to your point, the Democrats did better before they became less mass market, if you can put it that way. I mean, they've kind of gone very far left and they've really embraced identity politics, which is a very kind of narrow and specific part of the demographic that actually believes in that kind of thing. Whereas, maybe even during the early Obama years, they were a wider, more appealing party to a larger number of people. Maybe the DA is trying to replicate that. I think they're doing it very, very badly. I don't think the DA is actively bad, as in, I'm not convinced Musi and many other people there are very good. Not that I think Musi is a bad person, I just think he's a bit lost. But I think it's more a case of the DA has more of an identity crisis than it's pulling in the wrong direction. I think there are many forces, and the force that's kind of prevailing is kind of pulling it more or less in the wrong direction. But it's too fragmented, and as I said earlier, they offer no vision of the future. Either they must come out and say, guys, we're going to do the united Rainbow Nation, people must be united kind of thing, which I think is a bit worn out. I don't think that's where the country is at the moment. Or they must come out and they must say, okay, we're into identity politics, we're into reparations, we're going to be a bit more radical. Or they must come out and say, okay, cool, we're into property rights, we're going to say, take responsibility for your own life, we want to help people create opportunities for themselves. There must be, they don't offer any vision of the future. The ANC does, the EFF does. All the DA is good for is kind of infighting and bitching and moaning about corruption, which isn't very hard to do. Anyone can do that.
Yeah, they are kind of like, I think I mentioned earlier, like a professional opposition. They're very good at complaining, and they're very good at being the opposition and pointing out the flaws in the ruling government, which is the purpose of the opposition. But the problem is that, Christiaan has said this, they don't offer much of a vision of the future. It's very difficult for me, for example, to picture Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the Democratic Alliance. I think she would want to have nothing to do with it. I can't imagine like a Jair Bolsonaro of the DA, like a liberal version of Jair Bolsonaro or Jeremy Corbyn, or I'm trying to think of all these.
Can I just clarify what you're trying to say is that the DA isn't radical enough in any particular direction to
they're like
absorb.
mush.
They're much. Yes, identity crisis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is not to say that there are individuals within the DA who I view as being fantastic, and I really do, and there are MPs who I would vote for if they were the candidate in my constituency. But in South Africa, we have to vote for a party and not an individual, and I don't like that system. I'm a big fan of the first past the post system. That's a separate argument. But as a result of this sort of lack of vision within the party, and the fact that they have not come out, in my opinion, strongly enough against land expropriation, to this day I'll never ever forget Musi Maimane getting up in Parliament and just sort of going, well, land expropriation is not conducive with the developing economy. Okay, he was a bit louder than that, but I mean, it's like, you're talking out against one of the most dangerous things that could potentially happen to South Africa, and you gave this half-assed speech about technicalities and this and that. It was just so poor. I think they need a wake-up call, and they need to lose a few votes. So I'm not voting for them in this next election.
Doesn't that mean that you're actually just saying that the DA should split?
No, I haven't said that.
Why not?
I don't think they should split. I think they should just do a bit of cleaning. They should get rid of the people that are bringing them down.
I'm pro-purges, not
I'm also pro-purges.
Yeah, pro-purges.
No, seriously, purge people who are giving you problems. The Republican Party should do this as well. They should seriously purge a lot of people.
But currently, we're trying to work our way towards the point that we are a mature democracy. And the signature of mature democracy is that no party gets a two-thirds majority, which the ANC is still within reach of a two-thirds majority. And if they were to be a DA Liberal and a DA Conservative, doesn't that mean that you would be able to attract more of the old guard DA towards one side and more of a Liberal party towards the other side, which would mean that there would be far more diversity within the political spectrum?
Well, you'd have more options to vote for. And look, I mean, South Africa's already kind of saturated in terms of number of political parties. This is always the problem when people are like, oh, what if they split? What if we start a new party? It's like, well, we have enough already. I don't think
party.
That's
Yeah, good party.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It's a good party, guys.
Good at what, though?
the whole thing.
Exactly.
The whole thing about the DA is that it has some form of legitimacy, and I believe if the DA were to split, I believe there's a very reasonable chance that both new DAs would have some form of legitimacy. Because there's obviously, Musi Maimane would go to the one side, and for the Tony Leons would go to the other side, and you would have a better choice, because your views would be far better expressed in either one of the two. It would mean that one side would truly represent what you believe, rather than one party that says meh. I mean, currently the DA doesn't really represent anything. Well, if they were to split, there would be two parties that would both be in a form of an alliance, simply because of the situation that we're in, both saying different things, but both coherent and both really understanding what the future of South Africa should be going for.
Okay, I just want to say two things. Firstly, I want to get to your point now. Just going back quickly, a vision of the future and DA leadership. We know, I don't see who the number two in the DA is. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's a good point.
as a voter, I want to know, I want to be able to visualize the DA government and say, okay, Musi's going to be president of South Africa. I want to know who the vice president is. I want to, I want to see some sort of structure, because if you see that, you kind of see a party who believes they have a chance, even though they don't. But I mean, that I think naturally draws more people to them. That's the one point I wanted to make. The other point that you were saying is that what if there's a DA split? Now, I think this is a whole topic on its own, and maybe we shouldn't talk about it too much. But remember, if there's a split, this is going to be, let's call it a left and let's call it a right. Only one of those sides are going to keep the DA name and branding and structures and money and everything. I mean, and I think that's very important, because the DA has a brand. I mean, people will maybe catch on one day, oh, the DA split, right? I think important thing is the left, is the Musis of the world gonna keep that name and the brand in the party, and there's gonna be a new party, or is the kind of the legitimate old DA gonna keep the DA and there's a new party's gonna break? I think that's gonna be the crucial, but that's way down the line. I don't think we should stress about that.
Sorry to go against your wishes, but just to quickly respond to the split point. I think in an ideal world, a lot of us genuine classical liberals would like a split in the DA, purely because of our emotional opposition to a lot of what the DA has become and our missing of what used to be. But I think that, firstly, what you've mentioned is who gets to maintain the brand of the current DA. If we look at one of our splits of one of the major South African parties, the IFP and the NFP is basically an obscure, who knows about the NFP anymore, basically. It's
Does
not
such a thing exists? Sorry, I've never heard about
the
that.
NFP, New Freedom
Very
Party.
like
seriously.
2 seats or something.
Yes, they split from the IFP, which is considered one of the major South African parties. Well, it almost started a civil war, controversial, or almost responded to a civil war, it depends on the side.
People's War.
The People's War, which doesn't exist. You're being very bad here. We can see that through South Africa's history, split parties, the part that does split tends to lose most of their political legitimacy and tends to just sink into obscurity. And I can say now that I'm pretty sure that if there was a split, the Liberal part of the DA would be the one that sinks into obscurity. Because Liberals, for all the great things we have, we're terrible at marketing and we're terrible at terrible at seizing power. Kind of comes to the territory.
So you think the Conservatives and the DA, Conservatives.
Liberals, Conservatives, same
You
thing.
think the reasonable people in the DA are doing all the marketing?
No, I think the DA's marketing is terrible. It's like, especially during the Zuma era. That's why I told a lot of my DA colleagues, shout out if you're listening.
Colleagues or friends? Sorry, just clarify.
I don't say friends, but
They
like...
also write books.
They don't write books. I'm the only one who writes books in the entire world. They get very offended when I say that the DA is not good at marketing. When Zuma was at large, doing his glorious campaign of corruption, the marketing as an opposition to South Africa was easy mode. But the DA made minimal of headway in winning, getting more members and winning votes. That's pitiful. Zuma was easy mode. You should have been able to beat him easily. And the thing is, when you make simple mistakes like South Africa first, knowing that people have an internet connection...
First compared to what?
First
exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing is that you literally just have to just glance at European politics and see why that's a bad idea. It's not... and the fact that people misunderstood it, like a lot of the people I spoke to said, oh, well, people are misunderstanding it. We don't mean it to be like Britain first, that we don't like foreigners. I'm like, yeah, but everyone's interpreting it that way. Marketing is not about what you think, it's about what your consumers think. And if your consumers are misunderstanding your brand, that's your fault.
That was a very bad own goal, that South Africa first thing. I do remember that. And it's funny, a sort of segment of the DA has also taken up a bit of we need to secure the borders. These immigrants, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime. Zimbabwe's not sending their best. We need to build a wall on the Limpopo River. There's a genuine section of them that's now taking up that position.
But can I just to get to that, if they want to win the election, because they kind of say that and then they don't say. They must decide. Okay, guys, we're going with we want a wall thing. We're anti-immigration. Then they must put it on every single poster. And that must be where they're going. You know what I mean? Yeah. Right or wrong, whether you agree it or not. But they can't be like one guy says it in a speech and
and then the news media
go with it or not. Yeah.
And then there's op-eds in the Mail and Guardian 5 seconds later.
And nobody reads that anyway.
And then the executive of the DA is like trying to clean up after the bad PR. It just looks like an absolute mess, guys.
Yeah. They would win
goals.
They would win votes though if they actually went through with it.
No, I don't think that's a major issue.
But then they must choose it. They must focus.
Well, they haven't chosen anything yet.
Exactly. That's the problem.
That's the point. But I do think this is another thing when it comes to marketing. The DA doesn't have core values, but then a lot of the time they'll justify it by saying we cannot be strong liberals because it doesn't win votes. It's not an African principle. But at the same time, I'll say, if you truly cared about picking the ideology that gets votes, you would ban gay marriage, you would bring back the death penalty, you would kill foreigners, not just ban them, you would kill them openly. These are the things that resonate with South African voters. It's not the role of the political party just appeal to whatever everyone wants to vote for. It's the role of the political party to try to create a compromise of where society is going to go. You don't create a compromise before you actually go to parliament. You start with the strongest value, and then you have the discussion when you're against your enemies.
Yeah, and you have to sell liberal ideas. You cannot, Martin always puts this well, we cannot be so condescending so as to naturally assume that the poorest South Africans prefer socialism. I think that's horribly condescending. And if you know from your knowledge of economics and the way the world works that the best ideas are liberal ideas, then you need to sell those, and you can't pretend to advocate for things which you don't believe in. we're all coming with various objections and things like that to the DA right now. And I think, if anybody's listening to this, they can sort of see. It's like, it's almost weird. It's like a mirror of the DA itself, all our objections towards it, because we hear this left, right, and center, and we end up having all these little problems, and the final product is, it's like really difficult to put an X next to the DA box on the ballot, because you want to do something, you want to vote for a party that you really truly believe in. That's what I believe. And yeah. All right, let's stop talking about the DA now. We've given them enough attention.
You think we might get them votes, so you're afraid?
No. No, I just noticed one of them's going to write angry comments. It's funny.
That's good. Angry comments are good.
Whenever we write an article that's anti-DA somehow, we immediately get like some angry comments.
But that's our editorial policy. The more angry comments we get, the happier we become.
I would like to say.
Comments, so I don't know.
I would like to say that if you have an angry comment to send, please send it. We really would want to hear it.
Yes, we like it.
We enjoy any kind of
In fact,
recognition.
share the article
Positive or negative?
with a negative caption.
Okay, so what else is happening, guys? 2019. So we've got our election, and we've got a good thing that can come out of that and a bad.
The Civil War, is that good or bad?
We can expect the economy to go down the drain this year, I think.
Okay, different scenario. Now, okay, I have to say the Institute of Race Relations has convinced me that land expropriation is not just a political election ploy. I think this is very much part of the NDP, and I think a lot of people in the ANC are very keen for this.
NDP or NDR?
Sorry, NDR. NDP or something else. My mistake.
Everything is part of the NDP.
Yeah, it's just enough bloody acronyms.
We're not in Canada yet, so I mean, we don't need to worry about that yet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, them.
The Canadian imperialists.
Or the New Democratic Party.
Sorry, you touched on this NDR thing, and this is a thing that goes over my head and I've listened to France and Anthea Jeffrey and all these kind of, I don't know if the ANC website is up at the moment because I know they had some dates outstanding, but our fact checker will actually confirm that for us now. But I know you can go on the ANC website and you can get a lot of their policy documents and speeches from many years back. And the NDR does feature in there. I mean, that's just a fact. But I was talking to another friend the other day. I'm like, France can talk about this, and you can see all these old documents on their website or wherever, and reference and speeches. I cannot, in my wildest dreams, imagine that the ANC cabinet has a cabinet meeting, and they sit around and they use the term National Democratic Revolution, and they talk about some long, broad strategy to disenfranchise the colonialist elements and step-by-step salami tactics, frog in a boiling pot of water. We're going to take the land, we're going to destroy healthcare. I just can't see that. I think, it's not a conspiracy because it's there, it exists, right?
Yeah.
But I just can't imagine that being effectively put into practice by a government which cannot, get textbooks into schools. I don't see how they can kind of strategize that long term, that far ahead. I can't wrap my head around it. So I don't know whether it's true or whether these clever people are just talking nonsense.
Just quick.
Malesi and Becky had a very funny quote about this, and he said, white South Africans must not be afraid of the ANC introducing land reform, because the ANC has never succeeded in implementing any of its policies successfully.
The big thing, as I actually wanted to mention, is that maybe the ANC is so bad at delivering textbooks because they just really don't want to and they don't care enough about it. But if they care about the NDR, maybe they'll do a much better job at it.
I think the textbook thing is a bit of a snide. Like we can always joke the education is so bad because they want to keep people stupid to vote for them.
I don't think
I think that's
I just think they just don't
incompetence.
care. Yeah, I think it's apathy to a large degree.
It's a low priority.
Another banana republic is Mexico, but a big thing about Mexico is when they actually put their minds to something. If you look at modern day Mexico, it's cartel run.
You're really into this Narcos thing.
Hey, Narcos is a great series, but giving free advertising on Netflix right now. But when the Mexican government puts its mind to something, it really can do it. Look at the Alamo. Look at when they decided that they wanted to attack Sinaloa, which probably butchering the pronunciation there, but it was a state of Mexico that produced a hang of lot of marijuana. And they decided that they wanted to crack down on this. So they sent an army and just burnt down every single weed farm there. It's not something that the government does unless they really want to. But I think that governments have proven in the past that when they really put their mind to something, with all the stolen money they have, they can really do it, and that can be really terrifying when they do it.
I think also there's a difference between building up a system and a program that delivers textbooks to schools and breaking stuff down. I think breaking stuff and destroying is a lot easier. So we shouldn't kind of compare the two because they're different.
Exactly.
But I still, ideologically, I can't imagine Angie Motshekga. Maybe Cyril Ramaphosa and Gwede and those guys, they're kind of more ideologically bent. But I can't imagine the average ANC member, or I don't think the average ANC voter knows what the NDR is.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm being very ignorant, but I don't think they sit in cabinet meetings and it comes up. I don't think they think that far ahead.
I mean, this is. I think the South African Communist Party must be, held to blame for a lot of the ideological poisonment of the ANC. It's often an interesting counterfactual to discuss. Had the tripartite alliance broken up in '94, as I think it should have, it would have been better for the ANC for it to have broken up. What would our country look like today in terms of policy? Like, how much more business friendly would we be? Now, I noticed something quite interesting. I was recently on a bit of a road trip around a few countries in southern Africa, and we were driving in a northern part of Mozambique. Mozambique is a very, very poor country, and a large number of Mozambicans are subsistence farmers, and they live in these small villages out in the countryside, and every time you drive past one, you see a flag of one of the two main political parties there, Renamo or Frelimo. And you just see, the goats and the cows and the chickens running around. I mean, these people have got no access to running water or electricity. They live in dire poverty, but they sort of provide for themselves. It's proper subsistence farming. Then we came home, and I read an op-ed by somebody high up in the ANC. I can't remember if it was an MP or a cabinet minister or something. And he was talking about the problem of the number of farmers in South Africa. That in relation to the size of the country, we have a small number of landowners and people who farm. It was almost as if he was not really grasping the concept of economies of scale.
Or supply and demand.
Or
commercial.
Or commercial farming. And he was saying, and he basically said in this article, one of the goals of land reform is to make South Africa better so that more people can provide for themselves. And this was also repeated in the portfolio, the committee hearings on land reform. And I think there's a deep ideological bent that these people want to see South Africa look more like places like Mozambique, with lots of people living in dire poverty, because they want that. They see it as being good.
It goes back to one of my articles I wrote a few years ago, de-romanticising farming. It said there's an obsession among, especially the ANC members, the EFF, and a lot of socialists around the world, that they love this idea of subsistence farming. They hate this idea that there's people who actually might want to have hobbies, or people who might not want to be farmers. And they don't understand that to feed such a large population comfortably, you actually need commercial level farming. Not everyone can grow potatoes in their backyard and expect to live off that.
No, you need economies. Can I just say from on an unrelated note that farming is not for everyone. There's a lot of risk. You wake up very early every morning. There are a lot of things that can go wrong. There are a lot of things that do go wrong. There's a lot of know-how required. There's a lot of improvisation required. There are a lot of droughts. There are a lot of fires. There's trust me, it's the let's not even get to the human kind of aspects of it, or labor or anything. There are a lot of things that make being a farmer extremely undesirable unless you do it very well, or you have some innate passion for it. Trust me, I do not trust. If the EFF wants to go farm, they must go farm and see how far they get. It's you know what I mean.
It's a tough job, and you can't just sit someone on a farm and expect.
No, I would not want to do it myself.
Just to go to what you said about Mozambique, we're mentioning France, Korea, and the IRR way too much. I think they should start funding us, which they don't yet, by the way. They're listening.
Yes,
okay, so anyway.
But we are open to it.
We are very open to it. Anyway, so France said in this one thing, I can't remember where. We look at the ANC and their policies and what they've achieved, and we see failure. You know, and we look at Zimbabwe and we see failure. Yet the ANC looks at Zimbabwe and they see success. I mean, we see people poor and hungry, and we see failure. They see ZANU-PF still in power after, almost 40 years of independence.
And completely wrecking an entire economy.
Yeah. And they see the chaps in Angola and Namibia and Mozambique. The countries are, I mean, not doing that great, but the liberation movements are still in power. So they see success. They've taken the land in Zimbabwe, they've kind of ruined it, but the Liberation Party is still in power. So that's the kind of, the ANC looks at that. So our standards are completely messed up. We see failure, they see success because ZANU-PF is still in power. They see, okay, maybe we can replicate that and stay in power. It's not about whether the economy is doing well, or whether there's development, or whether there's poverty or unemployment. That's kind of very secondary in terms of their list of priorities.
Yeah, it really is a sort of ideological thing, and it's something where you have to be truly blind to the reality of life and just really want to get an outcome. And I think, unfortunately, the ANC has much fewer pragmatists and a lot more ideologues, and I think that's why we have this sort of bent, and I would agree with you. I think that could be one of the large factors around the National Democratic Revolution. Alright guys, so to wrap things up here, but 2019 we have an interesting year ahead. It seems to me like it's all going to hinge on the election. I know that all we're going to hear is election, election, election until it happens, and then it's going to be interesting. I have to say, I am picturing in my mind the DA losing a few votes and having this very emotional Facebook post to try and explain it. I've had this image in my head of that going all the time.
And Patricia de Lille is going to laugh all the way to
one vote.
She just wants a seat in Parliament and a free house and a free car and a free salary for doing nothing.
So what you're saying is she's a politician?
I think you've got it there. That's the word. That's the word I'm looking for, politician.
Yeah, I must say, I really hope her party doesn't get seats in Parliament. That'll be.
You hope the good party does bad?
Yes.
I really must correct you though.
Yeah.
I believe that being a politician can be an honourable thing. I truly do believe that she is something that is the worst thing that can exist, and that is a career politician.
Fair enough. There are some nice politicians. His name is Winston Churchill. That's the only one I can think of.
Yeah.
Oh, Margaret Thatcher.
Well, he was a flaky politician because he jumped ship so many times and then he failed and then.
But he made awesome quotes while he did it.
Yes, very, very.
But he didn't. He would have been a politician whether he would have been paid £1 million or a penny. I mean, the whole thing is that the man didn't need the money. You can't say the same about Patricia de Lille.
Yes.
Ann Coulter, American conservative journalist, who I don't like particularly that much at all.
She's not a big fan of the truth.
I'm not a big fan of her.
Cortez would go along with.
Yeah. Well, this is the funny thing, is like she sort of revealed herself to now be in favour of big taxes on the wealthy, which is rather odd coming from a Republican. But she made an interesting point on the Bill Maher show. She said that Donald Trump and Mitt Romney have been the only presidential candidates in the last however many years, couple decades, who would stand to lose by becoming president in terms of their salaries. Which is a rather interesting thought. Mitt Romney, of course, is very wealthy. Anyway, we're diverging out of South Africa here. So, guys, I think it's going to come down to the election. Anybody want to share their thoughts on what basis they'll be voting? I'll say, and I've said this in a few other episodes, for me, land and property rights is just so important that I'm a single issue voter as far as this election is concerned. What about you guys?
Okay, well, we're going to be sitting here 6 months from now. Hopefully we do many more podcasts in between. And we're going to have the election results, and we're not going to be that surprised, and we're going to be no more certain about the future whatsoever. We're still going to believe that Cyril is playing 40 chess, that everything will turn out okay. The DA is going to hopefully have kind of found some direction.
Vision in 2020.
Some vision, yes.
I
mean, so I'm just saying, guys, 6 months from now, we're not going to have any more clarity about the future. We're still going to be going to shit. Anyway, as for voting, remember there's provincial and national, right?
Yeah.
If I think possibly provincially, I'd end up voting DA because I live in the Western Cape and I think they do a good job. And I heard who's going to be, is it Alan Windy's going to be the premier candidate? Is that true or not?
Yeah, I think that might be true. I'm a fan of his, actually.
And he seems like a very, very decent, organised guy. So in that sense, I think I would pretty much like to be voting DA provincially because I want things to continue. Nationally, that's a very, very interesting question. I mean, I want the DA to fix itself. I mean, I kind of see myself as maybe a model DA voter. I can't say that. That's a ridiculous thing to say. Sorry, but I see myself as a person who would usually vote DA, right? And
model DA voter.
Sorry, there's no such thing.
I'm sorry. That is such a funny comment.
No, but like the person, they're
I know
bred
what
and
you're saying.
but you know what I mean. Like I would the traditional DA. I would be a traditional DA, bread and butter, first in line to go vote, right?
Yes.
Probably not, because I'm not that big in government. You know. Like if I drink another few glasses of wine, I'll actually share a secret. I'm an anarchist. But I won't share that secret, so you've got nothing to worry.
It's not as if there's a microphone on the
It's
table.
not as yeah, exactly. But I think nationally, you know, you want the DA to become better. I mean, if you think that, look, this is cut off 5 years from now, if the DA doesn't win more seats with being, you know, the kind of mush that they are, South Africa's going to go down the drain, you have to vote DA. If you kind of want the DA to reform and you think things are going to go downhill a bit slower than we typically tend to think that it is, I don't think you should vote DA. I think purely to keep the ANC and EFF numbers low, you should vote though. The one-man band named Cope, I like because Msue Lekota, let me just say his surname, is saying all the very right things. I don't know if he's a trustworthy guy. He seems trustworthy. Maybe he'll get 2 or 3 seats in Parliament. Maybe you should just vote for him, just
And
to
you'll
kind
share
of
them all
dilute.
themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Which
but
I'm
I mean,
fine with, by the
but
way.
he's at least vocal anti-expropriation,
No, I like him.
and he seems like a decent guy. So, but based on that, I can see myself voting Cope this one time. But I mean, I don't actually want to share. I think I may vote for Cope. I'm not going to say who I'll eventually end up voting.
You've got many months to change your
I'm
mind.
going to vote for the EFF.
Yeah.
You are?
No.
Okay.
I definitely say that the point of provincially, I think, is going to be far more important in the coming months, because currently we're at a bit of a movement in terms of politics, I would say, of which way is Gauteng going to go and which way is the Western Cape going to go, because it's obvious that the DA messed up in Cape Town, and it's obvious that Gauteng is anybody can take it.
Sorry, why do you say they messed up in Cape Town?
The water problems.
But that's been sorted. We've all got water.
They've really irritated a lot of votes.
Yeah, but they managed to halve the water consumption in Cape Town.
I mean, it shouldn't be the problem of citizens to worry about the consumption.
It shouldn't be, but I mean, we've kind of pulled through, and I think they would have been better than any other alternative.
I agree. I can't really fault them on Cape Town.
The whole thing is that I believe that I would not vote if there were no party that was good. And I believe that is something that you should really stand by. And I will be voting in the next election because I believe that it's important to keep, on a provincial level, whoever is in power on their toes. And I believe that on a countrywide level, that you should represent who most you agree with. And for that reason...
Ideologically?
Yes.
Okay, wait. So, sorry, I'm interrupting you now,
Yes,
but I want
fine.
to touch on that point, because you say who's best to run your immediate location, your province, your city,
Yes.
from a technical, pragmatic, practical, day-to-day point of view, might not be good running that system being applied to the whole country.
Yes. I mean, who would want the EFF to run their own area?
Yeah, but do you say they'd be better at running a country than running a municipality?
My feeling is that there's some parties that would be far more at ease running a municipality than running a country. And that to me means...
Like the Bushbuck Ridge Residents Association.
If that's what you want, then yes.
Well, it's an actual party, which actually has...
If that is what you want, then yes.
Can I vote for Quick Spa to run the Western
Well, I mean, if I could vote for anybody, I would vote for ExxonMobil to run the entire country.
Amen.
But
Fracking going.
I'd like to resurrect Lee Kuan Yew.
Lee Kuan Yew, I would vote for his dead corpse. I mean, he is the greatest human to have ever lived, apart from George Washington. I think that our listeners could definitely agree that, barring George Washington, who you need not compare to any other human to have ever existed.
George Jefferson is quite nice.
Yeah, please,
not Lee
please
Kuan
don't
Yew.
dislike if you disagree. Maybe just leave a comment.
Yeah.
I don't think you can.
We'll respond to you in office.
I will respond to you personally.
Let's wrap things up, guys.
But I would vote on a provincial level. I would vote ACDP.
Serious?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
You're an atheist.
I know. For one reason, and that is that I believe that they are, in my mind, the custodians of my actual vote. I do not want the DA to be in charge of my 50,000th of one MP, and I believe that they would not vote with the ANC. I cannot see them voting with the ANC.
There's a few other candidates for those criteria as well.
Yeah.
I understand, but the whole thing is that currently I believe that the best case scenario for the Western Cape is to have no party in charge. I cannot see, because I believe that a reshuffling of the values of the DA would be the healthiest thing possible for our democracy and for our country. And I believe that them losing the ability to decide completely what happens in the Western Cape would be the catalyst for that event happening. And I would, nationally, I would vote DA.
Okay, so my decision is kind of emotional. I'm a writer, so it comes with territory. I feel personally betrayed by the DA in many ways. I see them as kind of a cult to a large degree, like the ANC. That means that I cannot in good conscience give them my vote in their current form. My current national vote would probably go to either COPE or the Freedom Front Plus. Freedom Front Plus mostly because I've kind of gotten over my Africanophobia. And COPE because, as has been mentioned, they've been making a hang of a lot of good policies and a strong stand against socialism in this country. Locally, it's a little bit harder. I don't want to vote for the DA due to the aforementioned betrayal of my trust, but I do agree they've been doing a reasonable job in Cape Town, and I might not want to risk changing that.
Cool.
Guys, can I just say one last thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so my one last thing is, okay, so if you want to maybe feel morally good about yourself and you want to waste some petrol driving to the voting station, then vote for whoever you like. If you want to make a real difference in the world, go clean your park or take an orphan out for lunch.
Only if they're a nice orphan.
Like the Baudelaires. Anybody who gets that reference, well done to you.
Remember to like and subscribe if you get the reference.
Remember to like and subscribe whether you got the reference or not. Anyway, this has been another episode of the Rational Standard Podcast. As usual, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, the Rational Standard Podcast. We're available on Peeper. I always post the links to the episodes on my Twitter, @Babaya. You can also follow us at Rational Stand and give us a like on Facebook, or sign up to our mailing address. And also check out our partners being Libertarian and Think Liberty. They do much for us, and we appreciate our partnership with them. So thanks for listening to another episode of the Rational Standard Podcast, and until next time.